welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, aka the Cover 3 tailgate. Was buzzing with some observations, some commentary from Big 12 Media Days off and running. We got to hear from Commissioner Brett Yormark. We got to hear from the preseason betting favorite Utah as Kyle Whittingham was at the mic discussing his future. And yeah, Mike Gundy. We got to hear from him. Lot from Mike Gundy, and we will get to that in just a little bit. We've got another edition of Who You Got, and Dennis Dodd's CBS Sports Hot Seat Rankings dropped. You can see them over at cbssports.com. He's got a 0 to 5 ranking, 5 being the hottest seat. There's one coach on it. 0 being untouchable. There are 13 coaches with a 0, and everything in between. Tom and I will give you some of our reaction to that in a little bit. But to begin with one of our favorite topics, Arch Manning, EA Sports college football video game. Buddy, you want to talk about an SEO combo right there. Let's give the algorithm what it wants. So, Tom, if I remember correctly, the news of Arch Manning not being in the game, which was initially reported back in March, was met, I think, with some response of, well, what does this mean for Quinn Ewers? Is he holding out for more money, or is he doing this for the team? Well, buddy, there is not a lot of doing it for the team when you're coming out with Uncle E, as he called him, Eli Manning, for what I thought was an endearing promotional short little announcement that he is going to be in the game. The game, of course, set to be released next week. Early release on the 16th, full release on the 19th. But are you going to be playing with Arch Manning in the game?
No. I wonder though, does this mean Quinn Ewers' job is on the hot seat already? If Arch Manning is in the video game, is this going to cause Steve Sarkisian to rethink his quarterback depth chart heading into that, first game of the season against Colorado State? It's one thing to keep an eye on. I do find it ridiculous that we're having players make solo announcements like this, that they're in the game.
There are not players like Arch Manning.
Yeah, guys who haven't really played. I mean, like Arch Manning has gotten some stats. And again, I get it. I get the hype. We're part of it. I understand it all. It's just, it is funny to me that the backup quarterback at Texas is releasing an announcement video saying, I'm in the game, everybody, which is great. It is good because if you do want to take Texas as a dynasty, I'd rather have Arch Manning in it as my backup to Quinn Ewers than not, because once Quinn moves on, I've got Arch. I don't know what the backup was going to look like without him. He might have sucked. You don't know. So maybe now Texas is a much more attractive dynasty option for you. Although, unless you're like a Texas fan, if you're starting an NCAA dynasty with like a top school, you're pretty lame, in my opinion.
Oh, fair. If the angle into this is that now you get to try to win the national championship with Quinn Ewers, and then you get to try to win the national championship with Arch Manning, and you get to try to use your little dynasty convincing tactics to keep Arch Manning in school for another year when there's no way in hell he's going to be sticking around if he's projected as like a top 5 quarterback after his junior season, his true junior season. Trey Owens, by the way, would be the other quarterback there, who's athletically gifted. I'm sure that you could.
Yeah, but he's not Arch Manning.
I'm sure if you play with him on varsity.
Dreamy.
If you play with him on varsity and you have CJ Baxter and Jonte Cook, you can still be really successful. Number one, the nostalgia drip that is this whole, college football machine. The throwback to EA Sports. It's in the game. The play on that where like, I'm in the game, it wasn't like over the top. I thought that was cool. I thought that the commercial itself or the promotional video itself was endearing. I don't get much into palace intrigue, but I did let my mind wander into the idea that I could see Eli and Arch being like buddies within the family. He's just like Peyton commands so much attention and Archie commands so much attention that I could see that within the context of all that, Arch and Uncle E, as he called him right there, was that they could have a nice little bromance at family functions. So I thought it was charming. How about that? I thought it was charming, and I think that Arch Manning being in the game obviously probably comes with financial incentives as well. I'm not going to be numb to that. Did holding out help it? Who knows? But this is someone who has dealt with his NIL kind of off to the side throughout this entire process. So it's not surprising that maybe it took a little bit longer.
Let's just recklessly make stuff up. I heard Arch Manning is getting 5% of the profits
Of the whole,
yeah, he's getting 5%. Yeah, that's how badly EA wanted him in the game. And they can afford that because if you think about it, they've spent like $5 on advertising because we're all doing it for free.
Josh in the tailgate says Arch Manning to Coastal Carolina in CFB 25 is going to happen in my dynasty. I'm determined.
Just can you like I mean I don't know if they've released this in one of the trailers yet. Can you tamper? Like, can you just send
That's what
messages?
Isaac was. Isaac in the tailgate. I'll be tampering with him to transfer to my Mac dynasty.
Yeah, I wonder if you can tamper in the game. That would be.
We need tampering in the game. I actually, I look forward to the opportunity to get the sticks in my hand myself, but saw that you can't really adjust the sliders like you used to. You can't just go. You just can't go in there and turn Pip Chatterson into a stud running back like you used to.
You can still adjust the sliders for the gameplay.
For the game, but you can't adjust the attributes.
Because there was a while, it's like I would play on Heisman, but I would turn down some of the sliders, so it was more of a hybrid between All-American and Heisman, or else I just had absolutely no chance.
That's right. And listen, we'll I'm supposed to pick up my old man box today. It's the first gaming system I've had in a long time. And game comes out next week. We'll give you our observations as we get them all along the way. So Arch Manning again in the game set to be released next week. All right, on to Big 12 Media Days, where the day starts with Brett Yormark, and we can get to some of his thoughts and his vision and how bold he was with his declarations. Guys, again, I think Kyle Whittingham made me think differently about his future based on his comments. But it was Oklahoma State that was, without a doubt, the top story. First, before the event starts, Ollie Gordon releases a statement. He's saying he will be at Media Days, and, he apologized for his actions that led to the arrest. And the 20-year-old running back, who's the biggest star in the sport, he was there. They went with a face the music type approach. Mike Gundy followed it up with saying there will be no suspension. No, he will not miss any games specifically. And if there is any punishment, then Gundy said it will come in the form of making Gordon carry the ball 50 times.
That'll teach him.
That is an objectively funny one-liner that did read as insensitive to a lot of people, but an objectively funny one-liner. Yeah,
and you know what? That will impact his NFL draft stock.
So
you could be costing him money by doing it. It's a fine by not finding him.
There we go. He also offered this. I think we've got the clip ready to roll.
So I looked it up on my phone. What would be the legal limit? Like in Oklahoma is 0.08, and Ollie was 0.1. So I looked it up, and it was based on body weight. Not to get into the legal side of it, but I thought really 2 or 3 beers or 4. I'm not justifying what Ollie did. I'm telling you what decision I made. Well, I thought I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life. And I, it's just fine. So I got lucky. People get lucky. Ollie made a decision that he wished he could have done better. But when I talked to Ollie, I told him, I said, you're lucky you got out light because you make a lot of money to play football.
Thoughts?
How many beers are you allowed to drink before you're drunk, Chip? Like based on your experience?
I'll tell you what I am not doing is using an app to calculate it and then using that as my argument before making a decision on whether to call the Uber to go to Person Street or jump in the car. The answer is always call the Uber, by the way. Parking is a nightmare. But, I thought that, and of course he followed it up with a tweet later in the afternoon along the lines of saying, I didn't mean to, I was only trying to offer the idea that everybody makes mistakes. He was trying to humanize Ollie Gordon, and he missed the mark entirely.
See, I didn't. That's the first time I heard the actual comments. So, I was busy saving the world from the Nazis yesterday. My nephew was running rampage with the Axis and Allies. But I mean, I wonder if Gundy has like a chart, like his own chart, like for game suspension. Like if it's 0.10, no suspension. But if he'd gotten up to like 0.12, does he have to sit a game? 0.13, like where do we set the line? It is. I think it was very much the wrong way to go about defending him. I think you could just take it like, we all make mistakes. I've talked to Ollie. We figured this out. And, we're going to handle this internally and go forward, blah, blah, blah. I think that's a silly way to go on TV and talk about it. I also don't think I would be saying on live television that I've done that 1,000 times. Like that's a problem. But I will also say, Chip, you and I live in more urban areas. You live in Raleigh. I live in Chicago. I would bet that if you get into a very rural area, that's probably not all that uncommon because it's not like there's cops out there pulling you over when you're driving in the middle of nothing.
Well, to nitpick a little further there, he's 20 years old. Technically, he's underage. He also had open containers in the car. I mean, there were levels to this that are the missteps in judgment are deeper. There is some timing to this that after the incredibly tragic death of Kyrie Jackson, the former Oregon defensive back and just recently drafted Minnesota Viking, had passed away in a fatal car accident. So just the idea of football players and car accidents, like that's the sometimes the conversation that I would have if I was a close friend, you got off easy, it has to do with this could have been fatal for you or someone else. So, in that sense, you got off easy. I agree with you. But then Mike Gundy goes into talking about you make all this money and you would have blown all this money. No, to me, it's not about the money at all. It's about the humanity of it all. So I think that Mike Gundy was really trying to stand up for his player, maybe even take some of the attention away from it. And what it's led to is a whole, everybody come together and let's grill Mike Gundy because these Big 12 media days are the first ones out. And we said everything that is said here at Big 12 media days will be a much bigger deal than if it was going on at the same time as the SEC media days, or if it was going on at the same time as the Big 10 media days over the next 2 weeks. But for Gundy going into a season where I think the expectations are contending for a conference championship, you've got the columns being written, right? We're calling Mike Gundy to task. I'll tell you something. I'm not personally friends with Mike Gundy, but the sense that I get is he doesn't give a damn about your columns, and he does not give a damn about whether we think he missed the mark. But
unless OAN writes it.
Well, there you go. Yeah, great call. I mean, just fishing trips that changed the face of the world. This guy has been through the outrage machine one too many times to really feel like he is going to need to offer anything other than a tweet, but a misstep without a doubt.
We'll say, like, if I'm a state trooper in Oklahoma who happens to be a Sooners fan, I might start following Mike home.
Just, 1,000 times, huh?
I mean, if it's 1,000 times, I might just, I don't know. Let's see how real that rivalry is.
So we missed you 1,000 times, Coach. That many times. All right. Okay. All right. And moving on from that. And I will say on the Ollie Gordon side, I was on CBS Sports Network earlier in the week. They were asking about, what the expectations are going to be. I said, I don't even know if he's going to be there, but if he is, he at least gets a chance to be a man about this, to stand up and say, I made a mistake. And he did that. So, I wish the best for him this season. And no matter what his coach says, I hope there's better decision-making in the future. Not like, I got once. Hey, the roulette table went black. The next one's going to be red. Like, don't jump on that. But I think he'll have a good season.
I'm happy he owned the mistake, but there are some mistakes you should never own to begin with.
Yes. Kyle Whittingham, day to day, Kyle Whittingham comes
Telling
out.
you.
Kyle Whittingham came out, and of course, we're going to ask him about the fact that he has already gotten Morgan Scalley is going to be the next head coach of Utah football. He is the coach in waiting, but when they asked him about his future, Kyle Whittingham said, "I'm kind of day to day with it." I thought when we had the conversation about Morgan Scalley the first time, we were talking about 2 to 3 years. I don't know, man. This Coach Whittingham might be ready to hang it up at the end of this year. Let's say, if he wins the Big 12, I'd put him on retirement watch for after the playoff.
I was looking it up after we talked about it the other day. I can't remember the exact rules, but obviously he's 63. The age of retirement, I think, was 65. But also, I think for University of Utah employees, I think it was 20 years of employment you can retire. Maybe it was 30. I can't remember. But it was something like that. I was trying to figure out when does he reach those milestones. But I also wonder, considering how much money he has made as the head coach at Utah, if he really needs to hit those milestones. So
he has been an assistant at Utah. He started in 1994.
So he's been there for 30 years.
30 years.
And if it's 30 years,
he's qualifying for
he gets the full pension and all that stuff after this year. So, I mean, it's funny because we think about this stuff as, football, but these are jobs. And there are rules and regulations that like we have with our jobs that these coaches have to follow. So, yeah, I mean, it might be after this year because this is the 30th year. And I believe it was 30 years at Utah. You get to retire after as an employee and you get the full benefits.
State employees. That's we're just taking it back to the same kind of math and calculus that a teacher would have in terms of trying to figure out how you're going to see your exit. Now, with his endorsement of Morgan Scalley, not surprising. Did you think anything about Kyle Whittingham in terms of his approach to, like he mentioned, we've been in 4 different conferences like this. This is nothing new to me. He's been in the WAC, the Mountain West, the Pac-12, and now the Big 12. A chance to win a conference championship in another conference certainly stands out. In any takeaways from sort of his thoughts on the competitiveness of the new league?
No, I mean, I think that he's got I don't think he said anything that was like, you can't really just be like, yeah, nod your head and say yes, because he has been through this multiple times. Like moving conferences for a lot of coaches is a brand new thing. Like Oregon's dealing with it for the first time. Washington's dealing with it for the first time. Although I will say there's so much movement in this job now that it's not that out of line, but it is still different where you have to prepare for entire new opponents. But Utah's done this multiple times under Kyle Whittingham. They have a formula. They know how to approach it. And we saw when they came from the Mountain West to the Pac-12, it wasn't that much of a speed bump. They kind of picked it up pretty quickly. And going from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 at the time was a much bigger jump in the level of competition than what Utah is facing now, because now Utah is joining a league in which it could be objectively the best team in the league already, right from the start. So, no, I think I think he has every reason to be confident, and I think they should be confident based on the success they've had doing this before, and then just based on looking around the Big 12, because as we've talked about, like there are no blatant favorites in this league. But if you have to pick one of these teams to win the league this year, like, are there any other teams you're picking before Utah?
If I have to pick one, is there any other? My pick is Oklahoma State, but I'm not arguing your point in terms
of. Let's say you have to put your entire like IRA on the line for one of these teams to win the Big 12. Are you still taking Oklahoma State over Utah?
Oh, I'm going to go to the Steve Ballmer interview question. The answer is I don't want to play that game. Former CEO of Microsoft used to play a game where he would it would be like a guess the number game, and the first question was, do you want to play, after you heard the rules, and your answer is supposed to be no, because after you hear the rules, then the probabilities are actually so slanted against you, you shouldn't want to play the game. So if my entire IRA is on the line, and we are talking about Big 12 football, which could be won by 6 teams this year.
No, 8? I don't know.
I do not want to play. So Kansas State, Iowa State, Utah, Oklahoma State, who I said I think I've decided is my pick there. That with what is, I think, more wide open than even the odds board suggests, I'll pass on that game. But Utah, to your point, an absolute deserving favorite for sure.
Again, because Cam Rising's been there for 50 years.
He's eligible for an 8th year.
I hope he takes it.
No, he said that's not the plan.
No, Cam, come on, Cam. What, you don't?
Cam Rising. They asked
Cam doesn't seem committed to football to me. I don't know. Does he love the game if he's not ready to commit for an 8th season? I don't. I question his passion for it.
He said 7 is enough.
I thought, wasn't there like an old sitcom called 8 is Enough?
Was it about babies?
I can't remember. I think it was before my time. I remember there was a sitcom called 8 is Enough.
Yeah, this will be it. Cam Rising, 7th year senior, one of multiple 6th or 7th year players on this Utah team. Just an old group. And that's honestly, especially after we saw the success of Washington led by so many 5th and 6th year players, something to take into consideration here in our final year of the COVID bonus being in the eligibility system.
I want Cam Rising at his senior day, picking up his grandson and giving him a kiss on the cheek.
he's bringing children to the podium.
It's Cam Rising the 4th. This is my grandson, Cam Rising the 4th. I'm just happy he got to see his granddaddy play.
Grandpa Rising, Grandpa Cam. Hey, Grandpa Cam going out there suiting up. We're just so happy to see him. He still moves. Hips still got it. I watched way too many moments of him doing deep knee stretches last year to see if he was going to play. I forgot how frustrating that was about the he is or isn't that we ran through for like 6 weeks of last season. Again, a season where Utah went 8-4 in the regular season with like 20 season-ending injuries. Any slight improvement of injury luck says that this could be a 9-10 win team, and that's why they are the betting favorite in the Big 12. The day got started with Brett Yormark. And given his comments, I have to ask you, is the Big 12 the 3rd best conference in college sports?
It depends on how it's the age-old question. Like, are you basing it off of the teams at the top or the teams from top to bottom? Because if you're basing it off the teams at the top, I don't think there's any argument to be made that the Big 12 is better than the ACC because they don't have a Clemson, they don't have a Florida State. If you base it off the entire league, I would say that the Big 12 is far deeper than the ACC because, I mean, Baylor could be pretty bad. We don't know what Houston is going to be like this year, but like they could be pretty bad. There's a bottom of the league. It's just, I feel like in the Big 12, the teams that are currently at the bottom have a higher ceiling than the teams that are at the bottom routinely in the ACC. Like, I think there's a limit for what Boston College can do, for what Wake Forest can do. Houston theoretically could win the Big 12 and get in a playoff berth one day. So it depends on what you prefer. I think that overall the top teams at the ACC are far better than the top. Well, I don't even say far, but I would take Clemson over Utah. I would take Florida State over Utah. I would take them both over Kansas State most times. So in that aspect, no, but the ACC could be dead in a couple weeks. So from that aspect, yeah, it's going to be the 3rd best league. Hell, if they take what's the rumor? They're after Florida State and Clemson now.
What? Oh, Big 12. All right, so Brett Yormark, I tell you what, there is an option right now. If you're the Big 10, if you're the SEC, you don't really need to like promote yourself. You have built a machine that is promotional. Like you just have to go out there and you give good answers to the questions, but you don't have to sit there. I mean, my man, he had a stack of papers. Brett Yormark had his speech and he said, "We are the deepest conference and every game matters. I'll say it again for the people in the back. We are the deepest conference and every game matters." And I was like, okay, all right. Like he is the opposite. Like in college sports, if you're not at the top, you're either saying we want to preserve the past. And Brett Yormark is on the other end of the spectrum. He's like, he's doing the move fast and break things type stuff. They were asking like private equity. He was like, yeah, open for business. More expansion. Yeah, open for business. Patches on the jerseys. We are going to do anything we can to increase revenue. Games in Mexico. Well, it was going to be football, but
were there fireworks?
Like, I
Did
mean,
they have pyro?
did they have pyro? Did they have the WWE pyro at
Yeah.
media days? I did not
Yeah.
see any
Okay.
pyro at media days, but
Like,
he was on one with his declaration, not only of the Big 12 being the third best conference in college sports, but the Big 12 being a conference that has zero interest in turning back the clock or trying to hold on to a college sports world that is very quickly no longer existing.
so again, I didn't see any of this yesterday, saving the world from the Nazis, but like, was he doing like a walk and talk kind of thing like Steve Jobs?
No, this was his like standing commissioners forum.
Okay. Okay.
He was up at the podium and he was holding his papers in his hand and he was giving it to you, man.
The battle's already lost, so there's really no point in continuing to belabor it. But God, I hate conference commissioners these days. It's the way that they treat everything like they think they're running Fortune 500 companies and they're just trying to acquire assets so that way they can whatever. Yeah, okay, cool. Bring in private equity. Sure. I'm sure that'll work out great for everybody. It always does.
Yeah, I it is my personal opinion that would not be the correct move. I found his brazen attitude interesting, and I think it stands in opposition of what we've heard from a lot of other leaders in college sports.
Did you
And
see the report from USA Today about them giving Colorado the signing bonus?
yes, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's to
We're
again.
the first one in the door because Colorado leaves on their own. The rest of the group from the Pac-12 came later as the Pac-12 was falling apart. So they didn't need to put a signing bonus out there for those other schools because those other schools were like hoping that the light was on and that they could be able to come and find a home. Colorado left willingly weeks before. So the function of it does not surprise. I'm not going to say Deion Sanders was the reason that Colorado got a signing bonus. 2.5 mil. Come on.
You sure? I will. I mean, I want to be clear. I don't blame Brett Yormark for the death of the Pac-12. I think that's more the Big Ten's fault. But it's just like the glee that these guys take in the idea that they're responsible for these conferences falling apart. Like they made the business move. Like this is all just one episode of Succession. And you know what? Honestly, now that I say it out loud, I don't blame Brett Yormark for destroying the Pac-12, and I bet that bothers him.
All right. One last thing on Yormark. He said something that was very interesting, and this is a little inside baseball, so I don't want to like belabor the point too much. But he said they were exploring the idea of breaking apart their football and basketball packages and selling them separately. And I thought that was like, if you want to look at the super conference and the consolidation, it might swing the other way eventually, where everything is broken apart and kind of piecemealed out. The Big 12 basketball brand, to me, is stronger than the Big 12 football brand. The Big 12 basketball brand, especially with the addition of Arizona, like I think that they probably could, compared to whatever else is in there, they might be able to maximize things that way. That'll be interesting to watch to see how it impacts football and how it impacts football across all the power conferences. If any other conferences decide to do that, should be noted, SEC entirely with ESPN, ACC entirely with ESPN. Of course, the Big Ten with CBS, Fox, and NBC. The Big 12 in that unique position of being with both ESPN and Fox. They're already kind of piecemealing things out. So with the fast channel on the way as well from the Big 12, according to the commentary, just something to keep an eye on for those people that are into that kind of stuff.
We need to get to a break here soon, so I'll be quick. But that could backfire, the idea of breaking those two, like the football and basketball, because you saw the deal the Big East just got. A very big deal for the Big East basketball. If you're trying to claim that you're the third best football conference and then you end up getting more money for your basketball league from television than you do for football, that could blow back on you.
Interesting. So the more is going to come today as we get the other half of the conferences. But shout out to I will say that this is a very swift media days. They're the first one. We're talking about them a lot, but they're in, they're out. Deion Sanders will be speaking at 2 p.m. Eastern time. obviously something to keep an eye on. So we will address it as such. Coming up on the other side, speaking of Colorado, we haven't gotten a chance to talk about the Buffs in Who You Got, but I found a game that is moving in the opposite direction of a coin flip. But we're going to talk about it anyway, as well as some battle between former SEC West foes and an in-state rivalry at the end of the year. We are getting to the end of our Who You Got series. All that and more next.
Have you heard of semaglutides? Ozempic, Mounjaro?
Hartman, this could be dangerous. Let's do it.
South Park, The End of Obesity. New exclusive event. Now streaming. Exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Tried to pick out a couple teams we haven't talked about a lot. I feel like we've gotten a lot of Florida State, gotten a lot of Alabama, gotten a lot of Notre Dame. But back in I guess maybe 3 weeks ago or so, we were able to get a big collection of opening lines. And one of those was at another sports book, the Colorado-Kansas game. It opened up at 5. And this, by the way, is in Arrowhead Stadium. This is not Arrow. There are early season games against Lindenwood and against UNLV that will be played in the MLS Stadium of Sporting Kansas City. Capacity, I believe, around 20,000. Note, the other games, home games, are going to be played at Arrowhead Stadium. Obviously, capacity 3x or more of that MLS Stadium. So this is one of the games at Arrowhead Stadium later in the year. Colorado at Kansas opened at 5 and raced out to almost a touchdown in about 24 hours. So I'm interested in, I'm breaking the rules here of Who You Got, because I just think we haven't talked about these two teams from an on-field perspective, and I'm interested in that. So what's your expectation of this matchup?
That it'll be played in a mostly empty stadium, because I think that 60,000 or whatever this capacity at Arrowhead, that's a lot to ask for a Kansas football game. I think that the Sporting KC games will have a much better atmosphere than these. But this is what, late October?
No, this ended November.
End of November. Okay, so
into November, middle of November to be specific.
Like, health will play a whole hell of a big factor here, because we talked about this on HQ on Monday when you and I were on there. Like, Kansas, Jalen Daniels, I think this year he's struggled to stay healthy. And last year, they had Jason Bean. If Jalen Daniels is hurt, I don't know how much faith or trust we can have in the backup quarterback situation at Kansas to this point. So, I think that there's a reasonable floor, but I'm going to take Kansas just because I think Kansas is a better team than Colorado. But it's really hard to say, because Colorado has no depth, and I don't know if Jalen Daniels is hurt, how much depth Kansas has at quarterback.
You've got top 3 receivers returning for the Jayhawks. You've got a really good 1-2 combo of Devin Neal and Henshaw at the running back position. There's a little bit of Kansas, as I'm going through and doing my preparation, where I feel confident in what they've got offensively, even with the absence of offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki. I think that they are still going to be a dynamic group, and a lot of the coaching factor of Lance Leipold has to factor in here. I also had forgotten, and I need to do a little bit more digging here in terms of actually getting my eyes on some of these games in the time we've got between now and start of the season. But Kansas's defense, as they were dealing with all those injuries, did an okay job down the stretch. Like, I've got this stereotype that Kansas isn't good defensively, and they did okay.
They're all right.
Yeah, they did okay, especially as they were, dealing with all the injuries. Jason Bean kind of taking over. So I think I am higher on Kansas as being more well-rounded. Now, this is late in the year, and that's where we go to Colorado's top 11. Colorado's top 11 can contend to be a top 4 team in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those are still going to be available? And let me just throw 2 more words at you. Body blow. Because at this point in the schedule for Colorado, I believe they are coming off of playing Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have everyone wants to apply it to Alabama, but we've got some teams in the Big 12, and Utah is certainly the number one that you've got to be like, all right, if you're coming right out of this game, then it's going to be a little bit tough because of the physical punishment that they put on you. So curious to see what happens here, but my prediction is going to be that Kansas wins this game, and I would go with I would go with Kansas probably to win it by a touchdown.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it'll be high scoring and close and fun, but I think Kansas wins in the long run.
Yeah. All right. Next one in who you got. Again, we are deep into November. This one is Texas A&M at Auburn. A little bit of a true coin flip here. You can find it, Texas A&M is a narrow favorite at some other sports books. This one, a true coin flip. Just want to know who you got.
Late in the season, Auburn's going to be peaking. Give me Auburn.
Oh, and going to get those quarterback issues figured out.
Going into Jordan Hur late in the year. It's tough.
Let's see.
It's tough to go on the road and beat Auburn. And I mean, it's like I think Texas A&M is going to be good, but that's a tough game, especially late in the year.
Texas A&M coming off of New Mexico's sandwich game between New Mexico State and Texas. So if you want to try to play look ahead here, then I guess that would factor in. But what about Auburn excites you?
They've got some talented young wide receivers that they did not have last year. I think their defense, and this is another situation too, kind of like we just talked about with Kansas and Colorado. They're going to need some injury luck because I don't think the depth is quite there. They've recruited well in recent years, but a lot of that depth is very young still. But I do think if you just look at the top line of Auburn's defensive depth chart, it's a good defense. And if those guys can stay healthy, I think that's going to be a pretty good unit most of the year. The offensive line, I don't think I would put in the top half of the SEC, but I don't think it's a problem. And I just think that, like, when I look at Auburn, the only real thing that scares the hell out of me is the quarterback. I don't have a ton of faith in Peyton Thorne, but I do trust Hugh Freeze to play to his players' strengths. And I think if they get improved receiver play this year, this Auburn offense could be better. And if the defense is still good, I think this team is going to be more formidable than a lot of people expect. So like I said, at home against the Texas A&M team, I also think is going to be good. I'm going to give Auburn the slight edge here.
Auburn, this is their final home game of the season. I also think that it is their most important home game of the season. The rest of their home schedule, Alabama, A&M, Cal, New Mexico, Arkansas, Oklahoma, 5 straight home games to start the year. But then their fans are going to see them go play at Georgia, at Missouri, at Kentucky. You get Vandy back at home, off week, ULM, Texas A&M. It feels like that's the one where, like, Hugh Freeze might make Auburn fans nervous about the ULM game for a quarter and a half. But I think that he will be charged up and ready to go. And I'm glad you mentioned that defense, because one thing that I've found, and I'm looking forward to the opening of fall camp so I can get more feedback on this, is that this defense that you were talking about is old. Some of them started their careers somewhere else. It's kind of a little bit of a mercenary crew. But if they are humming, that could be the perfect complement to an offense that, like you said, has very talented wide receivers and a jag at quarterback. So you need to play good defense, come up with just enough key catches on third downs, and Auburn's
run the dang ball.
Run the dang ball with Jarquez Hunter, and then Auburn's got a path to winning 8 games and taking a step forward in year 2 with Hugh Freeze. All right, one more. This one you can run over to FanDuel Sportsbook, where you make every moment more, and you could place a wager on the in-state rivalry between Kentucky and Louisville. Kentucky, currently at FanDuel Sportsbook, or as of last night, a 1.5-point favorite. We have not talked about Kentucky yet, or Louisville much, so I wanted to highlight this one as well. Who you got when these two clash in Lexington?
All right, here's a fun game for you, Chip, because this is what I was dealing with this morning when I was getting ready for the show. Because we talk about a lot of teams, and there's a lot of movement in the transfer portal, particularly at the quarterback position. And when I first started breaking down this game, I was like, oh wait, who the hell is Kentucky's quarterback? And I'm like, oh wait, no, who the hell is Louisville's quarterback this year? Because there's so much movement. Do you know who they are off the top of your head?
I do. I thought initially it was Gunnar Stockton, but it's Brock Vandegrift, the
Yep.
other backup Georgia quarterback. And I have actually been for on CBSSports.com when we dole everything out. You know, you always get the Big Ten, I always get the ACC. I am pretty dialed on Louisville. I knew that we're begging for Tyler Shuck to be able to stay healthy for an entire season, and if he does, then yeah, I think the Louisville offense is still going to be really, really good. But we're dealing with some injury concerns from multiple stops with Tyler Shuck. But yeah, I did know it was Georgia backup for Kentucky, and I knew it was Tyler Shuck for Louisville.
Yeah. I kind of knew Shuck. Like Shuck was like an oh yeah, but I had completely spaced on. It's like, oh yeah, Brock Vandegrift transferred to Kentucky. Completely forgot. So that kind of threw a wrench in this, because it's like I always start at the quarterbacks trying to figure out when you get to these coin flip games who's got the better QB. I have no idea who's got the better QB in this game. So I am going to go rivalry game, home field. Give me the Cats.
Yeah, Kentucky playing at home for this one. Also, this is kind of a game where Kentucky's had their number. How about Kentucky is on a 5-0 run against the Cards right now, including a 38-31 win against Louisville last year when the Cards are running hot. They're number 9 in the country. And Mark Stoops, man, you want to talk about all the different reasons to feel confident the standard can be continued. They bring back a lot on the defensive side of the ball, where you always expect that they're going to be rock solid. Are they going to be able to get enough out of the quarterback position? We'll see. They run the ball really well. Featured back this year, old Chip Trainum from Ohio State shows up. He got some, a little bit of spot time as Travion was in and out of the lineup up in Columbus last year. So I think I'm with you here. I'm going to give this one to the home team, to the team that has won 5 in a row in the series. Give me Kentucky as the winner. All right. I'll tell you what, Mark Stoops is not on the hot seat. No. He's and neither is Jeff Brom. But there is one coach who has been identified as being on the hottest seat in the entire country, according to CBSSports.com's Dennis Dodd. And we'll get into that and more hot seat talk next.
Man, it must be July because we've got Colorado fans in the chat talking about how much depth they have this year.
Colorado, they are boasting their depth.
Yeah. Bud's not here, so I figured I would play his role.
But Elliot, we're expecting the Knoll boys back at least Danny back next week.
Bud might be gone until August at this point. Bud put out like 1,000 summer schools. It was like, peace, I'll see you guys week 0.
Bitch, fair. If fair, that man did yeoman's work putting together the summer school series, and we've got more of those that are already done, and they are going to keep coming at you fast and furious. We appreciate you for checking those out. It is one of the best ways that you can prepare for the upcoming season. Yes. All right. So over at CBS Sports, you can find Dennis Dodd's hot seat rankings. He does it every single year. It is a rating from 0 to 5. 5 is the hottest seat that you could be on. 0 is you are, quote, untouchable. As I mentioned at the top of the show, 13 untouchables on the list, but just 1 to receive the 5. And that is Arkansas's Sam Pittman. It is, to me, not a debate as to whether Sam Pittman is on a hot seat. I guess my question for you is, would you have added other names to the 5 category?
I mean, out of the 4s, let's scroll through here. Like, I think I don't know if I'd put Mike New on a 5 because the MAC is the MAC, but I think Dave Aranda, you could reasonably say, is on a 5. He's listed as a 4. I think Billy Napier is very much a 5. He's listed as a 4. Sonny Cumbie, I'll trust Dennis on that one. And then let's see, who else are the other 4s here? We've got
Sonny Cumbie, Stan Drayton from Temple, Will Hall from Southern Miss. You mentioned Mike New from Ball State.
Yeah, I would put Aranda and Napier at 5.
Okay, yeah. I could add Aranda and Napier, both of them going into a season where they have taken total ownership of the pressure.
Mhm.
And sometimes maybe that even makes it not worse, but even more hot because you have said like, yep, and we're going to get it fixed. I'm going to get this fixed. And if it doesn't get fixed, then the responsibility falls back onto you. There is the argument that Bud not here, if we're going to, again, stand up for him. Bud has pointed to the athletic director often, like would Florida allow its athletic director to make another hire to replace Billy Napier if the Dan Mullen hire and the Billy Napier hire have not clicked in a way that has resonated with Florida's administration? At some point, you probably want to make a change at AD too. I would say off the top of my head, you can do that. The new university president at Florida, based on my understanding, is very, very passionate about having a good football program. Maybe the president leads the charge to making a hire without even having a sitting athletic director. Wouldn't be the first time that such a thing has happened. We talked about Dave Aranda in the hot seat earlier this week. Without a doubt, he is on the hot seat. And the fact that he has made himself the defensive play caller and the linebackers coach means that if that defense, which was stinky last year, if they don't improve, then again, the responsibility falls right back on him. I didn't get Kalani Sitake.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Dennis knows more about that situation than we do. BYU is a very hard place to read as far as where the coaches sit. I think there has been some kind of rumblings in the last year about Sitake, like with BYU struggling last season in the Big 12 for the first time, but I don't know how quick the trigger finger will be on that unless they really struggle again this year. And maybe they will, because again, somebody has to lose games in that league.
Keep Choppin says Arkansas, do they even care about football there? Yes, very, very, very much.
Football school. John Calipari keeps taking jobs at football schools. It's weird.
Makes you wonder.
Yeah. It's like he's trying to fly under the radar.
Yeah, it makes you think he can't really take the heat. Are there any other names that you would add to this like upper crust? Oh, sorry. One more thought on Kalani Sitake. I apologize for losing my train of thought there. So Dave Aranda, and this is easy because we've been talking about the Big 12 all week. Dave Aranda won the Big 12 a couple years ago and won the Big 12 with Texas and Oklahoma in the conference. There is evidence and there is a standard that even he has set within his short tenure that if it's not being met, you can say that you are falling short. I think BYU as a new arrival to the Big 12 makes it very difficult to understand whether Kalani Sitake is meeting the standard, because BYU as an independent had a standard of, hey, you should win 8 games. Like we're going to be dealing with a schedule that gives you 8 winnable games and 4 chances to make a big statement or a big splash. And winning just a couple games last year in the Big 12 probably brought out a lot of frustration, but you don't even know what the standard is for BYU playing a Big 12 schedule yet. BYU, you're dealing with a lot of a different community than you can't just copy and paste from every single college football program. But I would say that there probably should be more patience to at least understand what your standard is and what is a realistic position for BYU football to be in. I'm not saying that Kalani Sitake doesn't deserve criticism or job pressure, but especially compared to Dave Aranda, who is at a program that was winning the Big 12 just a few years ago, BYU probably needs to sort of figure out the landscape in the expanded Big 12 before you can feel like you can judge what Sitake should be doing. Again, if there's internal stuff where hey, like you said you needed to get better at the lines of scrimmage, you had all off season. We provided you the resources. You didn't get better along the lines of scrimmage. There you go. Like if you've got that as a criticism, sure. But the rest, I would say the seat is not as hot.
No. One, he's got Ohio State's Ryan Day at a 3, which to me, I feel like that's a hard one to do because I would say he's at a 1 for 11 games and he's at a 5 for the last game.
That's why the 3 is perfect.
Yeah. So,
Average it out.
but I mean, I don't know. It's hard to really predict now because I would say he's got Mac Brown at a 2. I would have Mac Brown higher, but I think you're probably better suited to figure that one out. Coaches are just getting fired like a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to like a lot of times coaches are gone before you even have time to realize they're on a hot seat. So it's really difficult to do all of these coaches accurately. So I think Dennis did a pretty damn good job overall. Mario Cristobal at a 3. I'm not sure I would have him that high, but I do think that if he doesn't start getting better results this year, I would knock him up to a 3. I think I would still have him at a 2.
I would put Mario Cristobal at a 4 if they win.
Really?
If they win less than 8 games. That is a roster that is talented enough, and he checks all of the boxes in terms of getting the team on the field that can go win big games against good teams. If they are not, then yes, pressure should be increased. Even if he's the special son of South Beach, that is a failure to complete the task after showing great strength. What about Lincoln Riley?
He's got a 2? Yeah, I think that's about right. I mean, I don't think one bad season is enough to really put Lincoln Riley on the hot seat. They would have won the Pac-12 2 years ago in all likelihood if Caleb Williams had not pulled his hamstring in the title game.
Oh yeah, they would have been in the playoff.
Yeah, we'd be talking a very different.
He could have had another semifinal loss to throw on the resume. Come on.
Exactly. We would have a very different conversation about USC right now if that hadn't happened. And I think last year was an unmitigated disaster. And I think that there is pressure when you're joining a new league like USC is, and you're coming off one of their, a bad season by their standards. But he did actually finally give in to the stubbornness and do what he should have done a couple years ago and completely revamp his defensive staff. I do think, as I wrote last year, I do think there's a decent chance that USC will struggle a bit more in their first year in the Big Ten because I don't know that they're deep enough on the lines of scrimmage on both sides of the ball to really can play a Big Ten schedule week in and week out. So I wouldn't be shocked if they go 8-4 or 9-3 or maybe even 7-5 again. And if they do that again, then I would bump him up to a 3 or maybe even a 4. But also, I'm not sure of his contract, but I'm pretty sure they still owe him a lot of money. And I know that they're getting more money now that they're in the Big Ten, but I don't know if USC, considering some of the problems I seem to recall them having in that athletic department in recent years, really has the kind of resources they would need right now to get themselves out of that deal if they felt like they had to.
If he loses 5-star quarterback Juju Lewis to Indiana, is that a fireable misstep?
Yes.
Juju did his official visit to Indiana, I guess maybe about a month ago. I think maybe even was loving Indiana football, and he was in an Under Armour ad recently in front of some red lockers. USC shows up to the Big Ten, loses a 5-star quarterback to Indiana. Is that the Cignetti effect? Or has Lincoln lost his fastball?
It's best if I don't say anything, so I just won't speak.
Okay. Just if we're just looking at the actions that would change the tenor around Lincoln Riley, just that statement that USC has lost a 5-star quarterback to Indiana would draw.
That would, okay. It wouldn't say as much to me about Lincoln. NIL is changing the game, so who knows? But if you've got a chance to go to USC and play for the guy who's molded like Heisman Trophy winners and #1 picks, and you've got some, I think Auburn is after him, so you've got Hugh Freeze, so if you're a 5-star and you go to Indiana, out of high school, if you end up transferring there after but I don't know. I just think if you're a 5-star QB who goes to Indiana, I have more questions about the QB than the coaches you turned down.
And we're talking about a player who reclassed as well. I will let the Juju Lewis saga. I'll let Andrew Ivins, Cooper Patagna, of course, Bud Elliott. I'll let them hold my hand through what is going to be an eventful close to his recruitment. He is a hard commit to USC, and he seems to be having a great time. And look, this is the game. You're committed, but then you're still going to go through and get all your visits in that summer between your junior and your senior season. So it'll be interesting to continue to keep our eye on that one. Let's see. Oh, this one right in our backyard or in the Big 12. From the tailgate, and we've gotten a couple more on this. Is Ryan Walters, Purdue head coach, on a hot seat?
No, but I do think that there is pressure to see improvement because, like, you look at the record that they had last year, dropping off of the Jeff Brom era. It wasn't a very good start. Then you look at some of the losses that they had in the transfer portal. And like, if it's a silly discussion, but you talk about like momentum of a program, like the momentum around Purdue right now is not going in the right direction. So I do think Purdue could use some better results on the field to kind of change the way people feel. I do think if they go like 3-9 or 4-8 again, I don't think Ryan Walters gets fired after 2 years, but I think he would be heading into the 2025 season on a very hot seat. Yes.
Not a lot of head coaches here, which is a little bit interesting because Joe Tiller extended his tenure all the way to 2008. So Danny Hope and Daryl Hazel each were fired in their 4th season. Mm-hmm. If we were to past performance predicts future outcomes, Ryan Walters is not on a hot seat right now.
Not to me, he's not, no.
But year 3, year 4 seems like that's where, if it was going to play out the same way it did with Danny Hope and with Daryl Hazel, you go into that 4th season in a, get it together or else, and maybe it ends up being an or else.
But again, the calculus and all this stuff has changed.
True.
I mean, it feels like there's a lot more desperation to win right away. Like there's just not as much patience as far as building something up that you have seen. And I think it's just the influx of the additional money and the transfer portal have led everybody to believe that things should be a quicker fix than they are. But everybody has access to the transfer portal and everybody has access to NIL, especially when you start talking about schools in like the Big Ten and the SEC and all these big kind of state schools that have plenty of money and booster bases. So like, everybody thinks, oh, you should just be able to go sign all the best players that you want now because you can pay them. It's like, well, everybody's got that same opportunity. So I think we need to see a little more patience from those in charge. It's just how often do we see teams get more patient?
Yeah. Or Ryan in the tailgate mentioning that Purdue has pissed off the schedule makers. They did have to play. They played Fresno State, Virginia Tech, and Syracuse last season in the non-con. This year they've got Notre Dame to go with a trip to Corvallis. They draw Ohio State and Penn State and Oregon and Nebraska.
It's
and
rough.
A road trip to Wisconsin. It's a tough draw in year 2 after a 4-8 debut for Ryan Walters. So not hot seat necessarily. To me, it probably only just highlights the job Jeff Brom did to put together 17 wins across 2 seasons, was the best 2-season run since Joe Tiller.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to at least understand that maybe that's not going to be as repeatable as some would like to believe. All right, so tomorrow, and again, you can check out the full CBS Sports Hot Seat rankings. So tomorrow we're getting interactive. Of course, that means that we are discussing whatever we are going to discuss, whatever Deion Sanders says later today. And we are going to be listening to you. That's right. The big old bag of mail gets opened up once again, and the tailgate, you get in here, youtube.com/cover3. When the link goes live, you get in your questions before we get started, get the conversation going early. We love taking those live questions from the Cover 3 tailgate right at the start of Thursday's show. We will be doing that again, and you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you.